You're listening to the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast, and I'm Lou Temlett. I'm guessing you're having a good day because either you've been on the mats, considering getting on the mats, or maybe you eat, sleep, and breathe Jiu Jitsu. I'm so happy you're here listening or watching this episode. Please don't tap out before the end. When you want to find a way to express yourself, start training Jiu Jitsu. I'd like to welcome Zoe Lundy to my podcast. Hi Zoe, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I very much appreciate your time and energy because from what I gather, you are training almost every single day and you are the one that eats, sleeps and breathes Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep.
So tell me about when you started training and why training every day works for you.
Okay, so I started Jiu-Jitsu in 2019, a few months before lockdown, and I started training here in Oxford, and it was honestly pretty casual. You know, I was training a couple of days a week. I then went back to Judo a few weeks later because I was like, the Judo that I knew as a kid, that was pretty helpful. So I went back to Judo.
Yeah.
And I was lifting 2 or 3 times a week as well. But honestly, it wasn't something I definitely had a preference over Judo, for Judo over Jiu-Jitsu at that point, because the Jiu-Jitsu I found quite frustrating actually, because a lot of it just didn't make sense, and you turn up to like an advanced lesson or even an intermediate lesson, and there'd be a huge amount of technique shown, but it didn't have any context for me, and I just wanted to know, what are we doing? Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of it, and how does it connect to other techniques? And then, you know, you do specific sparring, nothing would work. You'd get in a crappy position, and it was just largely frustrating. But something kept me going back. And just before lockdown, things had started to click a little bit. I mean, I was still terrible, right? But things had started to click, and I'd started to enjoy it more. And I was watching a lot of jiu-jitsu at that point. I was watching a lot of videos, trying to make sense of, just trying to do as much homework as I could because it was very annoying to not understand what was going on. It was very frustrating. And training every day works for me because I don't have any other responsibilities, and I have enough money, so I can do whatever I like, and I choose that.
I love that. I love that. I think, you know, being in a position where you can do what you like when you like is amazing. Some of us don't have that, but actually, if you do have that opportunity, why aren't you on the mats every day is and would be my question, because I think you're right. It doesn't make sense at the beginning, but the more you do it, the more you want to train. Now, you mentioned Judo. Tell me a bit about your journey with Judo, all but in your kind of childhood years.
Again, like Judo, I wasn't super passionate about Judo. I'm still not. It was just one of the sports I did as a kid, so I just did everything. I did a lot of athletics, and then later football. You know, Judo was just one of those things. I was never particularly good at it. I was all right. I'm all right now. It is what it is. I'm pretty mediocre judoka.
Nice. But I also have some friends that train judo, a kind of black belt level. When I roll with them training jiu-jitsu, they're all over me and I have no chance. Do you think having that judo experience has given you the part of the edge with your jiu-jitsu at all?
I would say the one thing that a lot of adult BJJ practitioners don't have is confidence on their feet, and it's hard to get that confidence because once you're an adult, you know, you have natural fear, right? And you're afraid to fall. As a kid, you're not afraid to fall, and so you learn to break fall as a kid. Now it's innate in me. I don't have to, You could literally come up behind me in the street and throw me. I'd have no warning, but I'd break fall, because it's not, if you have to think about break falling, it's too late. You're going to hurt yourself. So I think it's if it's given me anything, it's given me the confidence to be on my feet and take someone down.
I think that's really important. Certainly, when I first started my experience, pulling guard, falling on my back, not feeling very comfortable, probably hurting myself quite a bit, but not knowing how to kind of break fall. And I know, most of us at the beginning of training, if we're doing warm-ups, and maybe break falls are part of that. But I think you're right in saying that children starting either in judo or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, or maybe any other martial art that involves that break fall, it's incredibly important. And training that mind right from the very beginning is kind of essential. And that's the daily practice that we should probably all be doing, just reiterating.
And the only way to really learn how to break fall is to get thrown a whole bunch of times.
Yes.
Until it's innate.
So you can do it. I'm not volunteering.
Just...
Okay, so let's talk about throwing. I've seen you in competition and at Enyo. I have mostly seen you play a ground game, but talk me through some of your stand-up game. If you're still kind of, that's still part of your strategy.
I honestly, my strategy changes depending. My overall goal is to be well-rounded. I don't want to have holes in my game. I don't want to ever be in a position and not know my options. You're not always able to do exactly what you want to do, right? You're fighting somebody, but to feel helpless because you don't know what to do, for me that's unacceptable. So I'm working a lot on my wrestling at the moment.
Okay.
That's like my major hole, I would say. And so over the last couple of months, I've raised the level very quickly by just focusing on wrestling.
Okay. Now, tell me about what wrestling involves for you. Are you talking about more of a stand-up game or just wrestling, whether it's stand-up or on the ground?
It's all wrestling. It's all the same. So this idea that when I didn't know anything about wrestling, I was said to Leigh, I got to learn to wrestle up. I got to learn to wrestle up. And I was just trying like all these specific, like 25-step techniques. And he was just like, it's just wrestling.
Yeah.
He's right. It's just wrestling. So you see Nicky Rod do it, right, in his matches, right? Okay. He's wrestling off his ass. It's all the same. Yeah. Off his bottom.
Okay. That's fine. So you mentioned Leigh. He is your coach. How has he impacted your game and your strategy?
So I met Leigh at an open mat a little over a year ago, and I was quite excited to roll with him because I knew that he was a small guy and he was a black belt, and that's my kind of best rolling partners are small technical men. So those are my funnest rounds, and those are the rounds that I just get tested, and I get to do my best jiu-jitsu against those kind of people. So yeah, I just kind of bulldozed into his life, and we just hit it off, and he just gave me some technical advice and picked a few holes in my game. And up until that point in my jiu-jitsu career, I never had any actual coaching. I'd never had anyone give me feedback and say, you're doing this really well, this is terrible, or this is non-existent. And I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't used to any kind of feedback, and I think that's a real issue in jiu-jitsu in general. And people end up with very polarized games with huge holes and no idea necessarily that they even have these holes. And there were some holes I knew I had, but there were some holes I didn't know I had at all, and those never would have gotten addressed. So I don't know how many hours he's put into me, but it's a very large number of hours, huge number of hours that he's just, because he saw my potential, and he's just helping me to reach it.
It sounds like that relationship is incredibly important in your journey through Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Would you recommend any of us trying to find a coach that kind of
I would recommend
inspires us?
everyone, because how can you do it without a coach? You're kind of, that's what I was doing before. I mean, it got me to a high level, just because I was being methodical, and I was, I think people don't understand, they don't realize how many hours I put into this. It's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of study, of God knows how many hours. I mean, like, I mean, it's got to be close to sort of 6,000+ hours just studying instructionals and drilling outside of class, and then trying to implement those moves in sparring, and just doing all the homework for myself. So, but then to have that guidance of a coach who can, I would say, kind of simplify it down a little bit, and help to give you some more architecture to kind of fit these details in, and help you to connect the dots between different positions, and realize, oh, it's actually the same thing, but we're just using a slightly different part of our body to manipulate their body, but it's all the same. And then it starts to get very complex, and then it starts, when you get really good, it starts to get quite simple.
I like that. I'm kind of overwhelmed and inspired by the thought of having a coach, seeking out a coach to kind of give you that feedback. You know, you wouldn't go into a work environment and not have, I was going to say, okay, I'm probably going to cancel myself out, but not have a manager or someone to give you feedback along the way that actually allows you to progress. And finding someone, whether it's at a peer level or a more senior level, in any sport, any kind of aspect of life, it sounds like it's incredibly important. It's often crossed my mind in kind of recent weeks, mostly talking with individuals like yourself on the podcast. You know, I've had some amazing athletes on the show, and they've also said that they review the videos of each of the matches for hours and hours and improve their game, even if only by kind of 1 or 2%. But it sounds like it's the most important thing to have that feedback to then reiterate and improve each element of whatever you're doing on the mats.
Yeah. Like, for example, like when I met Leigh, I was, because of the amount I put in, I was expert at the berimbolo system, leg drag, crab ride, all of that. So I was fantastic at taking the back, but I couldn't finish from the back, which is ridiculous. So we would just drill like 20 rounds at a time. He'd be on my back with the seatbelt. I'd go swap, and I'd get a little bit better each time. And with every position that I sucked at, this is what we did, and this is what we do.
I have been on the mats today and yesterday, so I've been kind of putting in my hours this weekend. And I've noticed more and more from having some kind of footage and some photos that actually most of my game's on the bottom. So I'm now able to see and go, okay, where am I mostly? Where can I make improvements? Why am I always there? How can I get out of it without, like you say, feeling frustrated about being stuck and not being able to finish or even progress the match at a certain position? Where have you found the most kind of challenging, maybe before coaching with Leigh? What was a challenge for you, or have you just used your methodical approach to progress each step?
You mean technically?
Yes.
I don't know that I had a technical issue. I mean, I wasn't aware. Like let me rephrase that. The reason I sought out Leigh probably is the better question to answer, because the reason I didn't seek him out specifically, but I was deeply I'd outgrown my situation, and you know when just something isn't right, like you're not getting what you need, and I absolutely have to find out how good I can get at jiu-jitsu, and anything that if I feel like I'm not progressing as quickly as I possibly can, then that's not okay. That is intolerable. And so I was at that point, I'd started just traveling all across the country, several times a week just to train at different places, try to find this thing I was looking for to get me out of the situation I was in. And I bumped into Leigh.
Wow.
And that was it. And what I was looking for was someone to help me.
Yeah. And was that completely on the off chance? You mentioned that it was on an open mat. Was it one that you'd been to before, or kind of?
No, it wasn't one I'd been to before, and I honestly went there completely by chance. I knew that Leigh was going. I didn't know anything about him, but he was a small black belt, so I was like, at least I'll get one good round. So yeah, and it just kind of grew from there. But the reason I sought Leigh out was because I'd completely lost my confidence in competing.
Okay.
Because I hadn't had any technical help, but I was good anyway. People would just blow hot air, but it wouldn't help me. It would just put pressure on me. And then when I went into competition, I was expected to win. It wasn't okay to lose, and it sucked the joy out of all of that for me.
Yeah. So having so much positive feedback actually didn't serve your progress.
But it's not feedback.
Okay.
It's not feedback, is it? It's like they're not telling me, oh, you did this particular technique correctly. They're saying, oh, you're amazing, blah blah. It's not actual feedback.
Okay.
And they think they're helping.
Yeah.
But it's not helping at all. It's doing the opposite.
Okay. It sounds like probably what we might be giving you or have given you is a kind of superficial level that doesn't actually get to the core of what you're trying to achieve and grow and develop more of.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay, cool. Good. I'm pleased we're on the same wavelength with that. It's made me think now a bit more about, I think on one of the episodes I'd asked about giving feedback in a scenario. Is that helpful? How do you give feedback or praise or whatever it is? But actually, you've just solidified some of that for me, that maybe giving a superficial, that was amazing, is too general. And what maybe is more helpful feedback, or actual feedback in the first instance, is specifics, to be able to allow someone to understand their game a bit more, or certainly the game with you or me or whoever. I had a couple of sparring sessions today, and the athlete that I was sparring with had very strong thigh grip, and actually at any point, if her thighs were kind of gripped either around my head and arm or anywhere else, then I was a sitting duck. And actually that for me was a point where, going back from that, I wouldn't want to be in that position. But that was a real strong point. So maybe I'll go back and give her that feedback.
Were you in half guard top?
I'm usually half guard. Was I? Lots of positions. I feel like I've been smashed up a bit today, to be honest, Zoe. But I'm usually on the bottom. On the bottom, head and arm. But the pressure from her thighs was incredible, unlike anything I've experienced before. So. This is the Jiu-Jitsu Lou podcast with me, Lou Temlett, coming to you from the UK. Go and check out the latest video clips over on ju.jitsu.lu on Instagram. And as you're listening or watching on your favourite podcast platform, I'd really appreciate you dropping the show a rating and a review. Today, I'm having a conversation with Zoe Lundy. Zoe, so we've covered feedback, we've covered the importance of having coaching and the importance of having very specific feedback. What does the rest of the year look like for you in terms of competition, in terms of hours of training, and anything that we can kind of understand and maybe absorb into our own strategies to improve?
So in terms of competition, I have the English Open this coming weekend, and I have the British Open Nogi the following weekend, and that's it for this year. Next year is undecided so far, but in terms of training, every night, and then actually I get most of December off because I'm a private school teacher, so I'll probably be doing a couple of times a day then. Sometimes when I'm sparring and if I get a little bit frustrated or bored, I just like let the other person get whatever grips they want and set up whatever they want. And like, for example, like if I'm on the top and they're trying to sweep me, I just let them do what they want and I'm just like a rag doll. And 9 times out of 10, like they can't sweep me. I'm not resisting, but they don't know what they're doing. And I ask them, what are you trying to set up? And they don't know. They don't know what they're trying to do. And I think this is it. I think this is a huge issue. If you struggle against the person, then now you're struggling against each other. But no one knows what anyone is trying to do, and it's just a struggle. It's just chaos, and it's a total waste of a round because no one's having any conscious thoughts about. So what am I actually trying to do, and how is the other person reacting? So I think I try to use my rounds as productively as possible. So, for example, I'm working on wrestling at the moment. So I'm wrestling as much as possible, as long as a room isn't too busy and people, I can have the right sparring partners, I'll be wrestling my whole round. So do a takedown, get up, do a takedown, get up, do a takedown, get up for the whole round. So I think just the number of people you ask, oh, so what are you working on? There's just silence. Like, how can you not be working on something? Like, I get it. Some people just want to turn up and have a sweat on, and that's fine. But many people want to get better at jiu-jitsu, but they're not actually being proactive about getting better at jiu-jitsu. And it doesn't actually require more effort or more time. It just requires some presence of mind. When you're rolling, when you turn up to training, okay, you know, I have a terrible open guard. Put yourself there. Put yourself there every round. Get past, get submitted. Okay, fine. Tap, start again. So I don't think that my strategy is anything other than just very, very logical. And focusing on the lowest hanging fruit, and then something else is the lowest hanging fruit, something else, and your whole game gets elevated. What happens, I think, to many people is because they don't get coaching or feedback, or because they're not thinking about getting better at jiu-jitsu as a whole, is they get good at one position, and then they get promoted, and then they get promoted again, and suddenly they're a brown belt with a one-dimensional game, and they don't want to be swept by a white belt, and so they never get good at that. I know many black belts that have no ability on their feet, which is mental for a martial art, in my opinion. And so I think ego is a huge problem. You have to. I mean, to say people have I have no ego, that's a lie. Everyone has an ego, but so you have to keep it in check constantly because it'll hold you back.
Maybe you can explain kind of working through different positions, knowing you're always in the same position, kind of methodically going through, working through that position, getting better at it, and then finding kind of other aspects that you're not so good at and working through. And how this is kind of I'm not sure. I may end up answering my own question, but I'm hoping maybe you can kind of help me navigate through this. But the things that you don't know that you're not good at, how do you, and I feel like I've asked this before, how do you continue to put yourself in the positions that might be a vulnerable position for you to be able to get feedback and improve?
How do I manufacture that in rolling?
What I'm thinking is when I'm only a blue belt, but when I'm in certain positions, it's kind of a rinse and repeat. And I end up repeating that same pattern of maybe 3 or 4 positions, maybe not even that many. And I feel like there's a whole scope of my game that's outside of that remit. But maybe it's just the number of hours and the kind of.
I would say if you're finding this, so you're encountering like the same problem in the same positions repeatedly, okay, then again, no, you've identified problems though, right? So I think you ask a coach, and get some feedback on how to deal with that, and then once you're in that position, and do some specific sparring with the coach from that position, top and bottom, and then get the answers, or at least some options, and then go back into sparring. And and collect data.
I like that. Are there any positions you find more difficult than others? Or have you kind of worked through so many positions with the 6,000 hours so far that have alleviated some of those uncomfortable situations?
I mean, any position where you're down is is going to be more difficult, right? Because you're behind.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, generally, if there's anything I've been really struggling with, I've kind of dealt with it. I do a lot of cross training because
Okay.
I think if you just train in, I know if you just train in one place with the same sparring partners, you get used to each other and you get a
Yeah.
little bit complacent because it's my home gym and you're comfortable. I think if you
Yeah.
train in many places, it's kind of like competition training, because in
Yeah.
competition you encounter different people, right? And they do things that maybe you haven't seen before. You get the
Yeah.
same experience without the nerves if you just go to a
Yes.
bunch of open mats. So, but
Yeah.
open mats or classes elsewhere in the country, and there's
Yeah.
been loads of times that I've come back and someone's done something, and I've
Mm.
struggled to deal with it, and I go troubleshoot it with Leigh, and then
Yeah.
we fix it, and I'm like, great. And so many times that same thing has happened, someone else has done it, and I've been like,
Yeah.
yes, and I've dealt with it like really well.
Yeah.
So it's just
And
it's I'd say it's not mat hours, but it's the amount of data you've collected and how
yeah.
you have processed that data, what you've done with that data.
Okay. Do you feel a sense of pride and accomplishment, if only a little bit of pride and accomplishment, each time you're kind of working through and have resolved the next kind of set of
Oh
puzzles
yeah,
within jiu-jitsu?
that's the number one thing I love about jiu-jitsu. Like
Okay.
that is why I love jiu-jitsu. Like competing and is kind
Yeah.
of just something I feel like I should be doing. But it's that problem solving and that technical mastery
Yeah.
that's so appealing.
I like that. I was doing some, I don't know, it wasn't X Guard. I can't even remember what it was, but it felt like those puzzles that everyone kind of got in the 80s and 90s that were like metal bars that you had to unhook or kind of, not Rubik's Cubes, but other physical puzzle pieces.
Yeah,
And yesterday jiu-jitsu felt like that for me. It was unhooking, unlinking, and actually getting free from puzzles within my jiu-jitsu kind of game. And that for me felt like a new piece of knowledge for me in
yeah,
unpicking what jiu-jitsu is about. um,
yeah.
how have you kind of progressed your mindset with from not understanding the point of jiu-jitsu to where you are now? And obviously there's number of hours, but what other aspects have got you from where you were to where you are now?
When COVID hit, again, that was when I started uh, realizing I quite liked jiu-jitsu and I wanted to do something with it. And then
Yeah.
lockdown happened. But honestly, lockdown was the best thing that could possibly have happened at that point, even though I didn't feel like
Yeah.
it at the time,
Yeah.
because it took away classes from me,
Yeah.
which actually were an incredibly inefficient way to learn and is a very inefficient way to learn if that's all you're doing, and made me responsible for my own progress because there was no outside input.
Yeah.
So I kitted it out with mats, and
Yeah.
at that point I was like, all right, so let's just map out everything that I know positionally
Yeah.
about jiu-jitsu. What do I know from the certain positions? It didn't take me long at all because I didn't know very much. And then me and my ex, who's my best friend, we were like, all right, then let's find resources. And so I
Yeah.
started with Keenan Cornelius because I was struggling to understand like the Brazilian. I hadn't found a Brazilian that I connected with, or that
Yeah.
at least Keenan was like, okay, well his English is really good, and
Yeah.
um, I can. But even he is not a fantastic teacher, I found, but it was kind of helpful at the time. So I just remember me and Nathan were just in the next room, and just he was a blue belt at the time, but we both sucked, and just trying a simple De La Riva off balance, and
Yeah.
God, like it was so inefficient at the start because we really it was like the blind leading the blind, but
Yeah.
it forced me to find a way to do this,
Yeah.
to find a way to make it efficient. And so it was kind of like a exponential curve, right? It was long time period, not much improvement, but actually it was laying the foundation, and it was carving my own path. And so lockdown was kind of broken up, wasn't it? And then we went back to the gym a little bit, and just from that first period of lockdown, which on paper hadn't actually achieved very much, the difference in my game was like incredible. Like I was like passing people's guard. I'd been watching a lot of Rafa Mendes at that point, and his movement passing is just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I was I was leg pummeling. No one had taught me to do that. I was leg pummeling. I was using my legs to pass, and I watched a video of myself, and I was like, holy crap, look at the way I'm moving. Oh my God, like the difference was incredible. And so then the next lockdown happened, and everything was kind of set. I knew what I was doing. I'd found John Danaher, and it was a lot more streamlined what Nathan and I were doing. And then I found Mikey Musumeci, and it just kind of, I then had the confidence to be like, you know what, I don't need anyone else. Like I can do this on my own. I can get my drilling partners over. And when I went back after the final lockdown, I was like, I'd studied the whole Berimbolo 1 and 2 I'd studied and drilled to perfection. And I was just like taking people's backs, and and it kind of just went from there. Then I went to close guard, etc., just position by position. Usually I'd work 2 techniques or 2 positions, one top, one bottom simultaneously, and then just move on to the next.
I have massive respect for Berimbolo, or anyone that can do a Berimbolo. I don't quite have the physical capability to do it yet, but admire the art and the beautiful move that is that particular position. So that's good. It sounds like you've had lots of inspiration, and I love hearing actually the energy and the drive from you as an individual to progress yourself. You know, it's not anybody else's game, it's not anybody else's responsibility. And I think when we go to classes, sometimes we feel it's the professors or the coach's responsibility to help us through that. But actually, you've taken the initiative on your own and just gone, it's my responsibility. I'm going to be accountable for everything that I'm learning. And it sounds like, you know, once again, there's a beautiful amount of pride and accomplishment in being able to see your progress and how good you are right now. If that's not blowing too much smoke. But I think,
it's okay. It's okay. Leigh will talk me down. Don't worry.
Oh, it's so good to hear. Let's talk a bit about gi and no gi, because I know some of us feel like we might prefer one over the other, but actually, what is it for you that makes them feel the same?
Because like Mikey says, like good jiu-jitsu is good jiu-jitsu. You know, if Gordon Ryan put on a gi, he'd kill everybody, right? Yeah. Mikey took off the gi and killed everybody. There are some adaptations. You know, the gripping is different. It's more transient in no gi, but positionally, it's all the same, right? Yeah. And I think if you only train one, you're limiting your progress, well, regardless of what you want to compete in. Because if you, let's say, for example, if you are overly reliant on handles and grips in the gi, you take off the gi, and then you realize, I've got huge holes in my game because I've become lazy with my positioning, because there's more forgiveness in certain positions. Equally so, if you are a no-gi player and you put on the gi and you can't escape, well, your escapes aren't very good because you're relying on athleticism and sweat. So I think at least if whatever you do, train the other one at least one time a week.
Yeah. I think that's very good advice. Actually, being able to, if you don't know the gaps in your game and you normally, train in gi or just in no gi, switch around. That sounds like at least one simple piece of advice to find the gaps in your game to improve.
Yeah.
That makes
And also
sense.
just ask your rolling partners for feedback.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like if I try not to, I never talk in rolls, but after rolls, if someone's doing something really obviously wrong repeatedly, I'll tell them, because it's helpful. You know, I'm not going to give them 4 or 5 things to work on, because they'll remember none of it. But you say one thing, like stop giving up the underhook, and they'll be like, oh, okay, and it'll stick with them, and it'll help.
That sounds really helpful as well. If you kind of observe a number of things, focus on one thing, specific feedback, one piece of feedback and advice.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
Do you ever suggest how they could maintain the underhook, for example, or do you just say you need to work on it?
No. I'll tell them how to do it, obviously.
Okay.
So that'd be a bit mean. Work on this. Good luck. Bye.
Yeah, that sounds like kind of my previous coaching experience, or being given feedback. It's like, here's a gap. Go away. You should know how to fix that, and of course you don't. And actually, we do need to be told. We do need to be told. That's it.
Yeah. I think if someone's very, very new, then I would probably not say anything at all, because I think there's an element of you have to, like you said, you've identified problems that you're repeatedly finding. So you've struggled, now you're frustrated, now you're looking for answers, right?
Yeah.
So when you get those answers will have relevance for you.
Yeah.
And so you'll be able to implement those changes right away. Where if someone had said, oh, by the way, when you end up in this position that you don't know about, do this. You're like, doesn't mean anything to you. You're not going to remember it. It's a waste of time. So you have to have kind of consciously, for feedback to really be taken on and to be implemented and useful, you have to have kind of encountered those problems and struggled against them.
Okay. I am very intrigued with the not talking, or kind of not speaking during rolls. There are a number of us that stay completely silent. Forgive me for every training partner that I've ever had. I tend to notice my flaws as I go along and talk. But it sounds like in your game that actually you're using your mental capacity to progress through your game. I'm just completely not working on my mental game at all.
I just realized sometimes I do talk. So if someone does something to me that is so amazing, I'll start laughing, or I'll be like, oh my God. And if I do something that is equally amazing, I will be like, I'll have to be like, that was pretty cool. But yeah,
nice.
That's kind of involuntary though.
That's fine. I appreciate you sharing that, because sometimes, there's some people that are incredibly serious on the mats, and that kind of scares me a bit, that actually they might have the upper hand, because I'm not used to staying completely silent. I usually express myself facially, whether that's grimacing at myself because I've given something up, or feeling, I don't know, occasionally, very, very infrequently, kind of pleased that I've managed to pull on a something move, or I've dealt with a lockdown and I've swept. So what is your favourite position, or kind of sequence of events on the mats at the moment? Without giving too much away for any future competitors that might be listening.
I mean, I think I'm well-rounded, so I don't think it'll make a difference whatever I say. I'm very confident in my guard. My guard's hard to pass. But I actually prefer being on top, which is not something I've really showcased too much in my recent matches, because most of my recent performances have been no-gi, and my wrestling is not ready yet. So it's improving, but it's not ready yet. So it's not a strategy I would choose right now when my guard is good. But actually, passing is something that I really, really love. I really love passing, and hopefully we'll be able to showcase some of that soon.
That sounds good. And actually, when you were talking about your training at home during lockdown, passing guard and kind of, that sounded like some of your very early individual progress.
Yeah, so I was working really heavily with De La Riva, I guess I just picked that as a starting point, right? I had to start somewhere, so I was like, okay, De La Riva, and movement passing as well. I didn't really develop a pressure game actually until I'll correct myself. I had absolutely zero top pressure until I met Leigh. So I'd be able to pass, and then I just get like thrown off. My pressure now is like quite disgusting, so that's good.
Nice.
But it's the kind of, like you said before we started recording, about when you watch me, it's like the flow between positions, and
seamless.
I've literally watched, it's almost like a bot, my brain. I've watched so many thousands of hours of Rafa Mendes, and it's almost like it's a lot of it is subconscious. And you're right, like I can see the position, I can see, like, fast forward ahead of time what my body's going to do to get to the next position. And that visualization, I do a lot of visualization as well. So if I can see the position, if I can see myself doing the position, then my body can do the position. So yeah, I see what I want, I see how to get there, and then I manufacture a way to get there.
I like that. I sometimes imagine myself in a certain position, but I haven't connected each one of those to finish a game yet. So maybe that's part of my missing strategy. I love the idea that you use visualization to actually get yourself into those positions and manufacture that kind of shape of the role or the sparring or whatever. I think that's incredibly helpful from a mind body kind of connection perspective. And actually, when I've seen you, it is completely seamless from one move to the other. There's no like pausing or no furrowing of the brow, either kind of emotionally, physically, or verbally.
Yeah, my face is like this when I compete, but it's because your head has to be clear.
Yeah.
So when like when you roll, when you compete, your head should be completely clear. You shouldn't be like really feeling any emotions.
Yeah.
No, or at least I find that slows me down, or that gets in my way.
Yeah.
Because then you make emotional decisions.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely right. And at the beginning of the show, I talked about, I think we discussed this, about being able to express yourself fully. My experience in dancing, when I'm on the dance floor, nothing else matters. No, I don't care about anybody else. I mean, obviously, apart from my dance partner, but it's a space where I don't have to think about anything else. It just flows. It just progresses through, even if I've never danced with that person before. But I've not got to that being able to feel comfortable and express myself yet on the mats for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. But it sounds like actually that's the key, one of the keys in having exceptional Jiu Jitsu.
I'd say I would agree with that for sure. You've got to feel like comfortable in what you're doing, confident in your game, to just sort of be assertive and to kind of impose your game on someone else.
Yeah, nice. I love it. I love it. I'm now kind of in a zone of visualizing, progressing through a kind of sparring session, maybe even a competition. What's coming up next for you? Yeah, I know you've got the English Open and the British Open, if that's correct, and lots of hours of training. What else are you kind of working on at the moment?
Kind of just tightening things up, really. There's, it's more a case of there's no massive holes anymore in my game. But it's now a case of kind of just tightening things up. Let me see if I have it here. So working towards my brown belt, and I can't. It's somewhere. I probably should know where it is. Leigh has these little syllabus books, and I hope I haven't lost them. Basically, I've got to tick off quite a few techniques before I can get my brown belt. So that's another big thing I'm working on. So I'll be working towards my brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and then my black belt in judo.
Amazing.
So I need to get my black belt.
You're incredibly inspiring, Zoe. I I'm incredibly inspired by you, and I will be watching your progress. How can people follow your journey?
So I've now finally relented and made a BJJ specific Instagram. My personal Instagram, which I've been using for BJJ as well, has to say private because of my job. And I can't have my students seeing personal information. So I have made it took me like 6 hours, and I was like, I'm just going to do it. 6 hours of like trawling through my phone, being like 5 years of photos and just putting everything together and kind of condensing it down. But yes, it exists now. And I'll be trying to be as active on that as possible because unfortunately it seems you can't really do anything without a following. You can't really get anywhere without following, which is a bit annoying, but it's the world today. So yes, you can follow my BJJ Instagram, the Mole BJJ, all lowercase, the Mole BJJ.
Fabulous. I will add that in the show notes, Zoe, so people can follow your jiu-jitsu journey. I'm sure they'll be incredibly inspired or continue to be inspired by your journey and your progress, and the number of thousands of hours that you have already taken to learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and probably thousands and thousands more hours in your future of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been an incredible experience talking to you, and thank you for sharing such brilliant gems and your mindset for training and achieving as much as you have on the mat so far. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for telling your friends about this show. And as soon as this episode ends, I'd really appreciate you dropping the show a rating and a review. Thanks again for listening. Catch you on the next episode of the Jiu Jitsu podcast.